You've said exercise is the ultimate elixir. And can you talk a bit about why that is?
I think it's just because the data are so clear. I hope no one listening to this thinks that that's Peter's opinion, because it's not. It's just a fact. It's a fact in the same way that having type 2 diabetes doubles your risk of cancer and cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's disease. And it's a fact like smoking tenfold increases your risk of lung cancer. And similarly, if you look at all of the metrics that are associated with longevity, there are none that even come within the same zip code as having a very high cardiorespiratory fitness measured by VO2 max and having high muscle mass and having high strength. The hazard ratios associated with those things are so far in excess of the hazard ratios associated with everything else that we already know is harmful, such as having high blood pressure, having high ApoB, having type 2 diabetes, smoking. We know that those things are harmful and we know how to quantify the harm of those. But the benefit of high fitness, high muscle mass, and high strength is higher in magnitude. And so when you look at the reproducibility and the consistency of the data, independent of the series, independent of the population you're looking at, you can't help but come to the conclusion that this is the single most important thing that we need to do. And the only way to achieve those metrics, that is to say, to have high muscle mass, to have high strength, to have high VO2 max, is to do the training that produces those things.
And so just to bridge, the why behind the protein consumption is to activate muscle protein synthesis to build muscle. So let's spend a moment, let's split up between resistance training and cardio. And let's say that we've got a listener who is busy. They work, they have a life, maybe they're a parent, they have a half hour. That's all realistically they have. Maybe they get an hour on the weekends. How do you think about, I've got 30 minutes a day. What should I do? How should I split up cardio versus resistance training, the minimum effective dose? Like, how do we help that person?
Well, the first thing I'd say is like, congratulations, because that's, maybe that's not as much as Peter exercises, but who cares? That's still plenty, right? So if you look at the reduction in risk that comes from going from doing zero exercise to doing 3 hours a week, which is a little less than what this person will end up doing, right? This is a person who's probably going to get to 4 hours a week of exercise. But just going from zero exercise to 3 hours a week is going to reduce your risk of all-cause mortality by 50%. What that means in English is making that change from no exercise to 3 hours a week means that at any moment in time, your risk of dying in the next year is 50% less than a person who's not exercising, i.e. your former self. So let's just say that's fantastic. You can only give me 3 hours a week or 4 hours a week. I will take it. Let's run with it. For that individual, I would probably keep it very simple and make it a 50-50. So I would say during the week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do 30 minutes of strength. Tuesday, Thursday, do 30 minutes of cardio. And on the weekend, do that hour session as cardio. And we can get into the details of how we would want to mix up the intensity and things like that. But that's basically the scaffolding.
Yeah, I think, how do you define something you've talked a lot about, zone two, zone three, and the way I like to break zone two down for people who are unfamiliar with it and don't have the wearables? Essentially, you are slightly out of breath. You can kind of hold a conversation, but it's a little bit difficult. But how do you think, if you're thinking about cardio, what does that look like? Is that sprints? Is that jogging? Is that the stairs? Is it jumping rope? Is it all of the above? Is it training? In my resistance training, I'll go fast.
Yeah, no. So I would say for the cardio, you want about 80% of that time to be at zone two and the other 20% to be much closer to your red line. So again, one way that I would do that in our hypothetical case is I would say on the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just do 30 minutes of zone two each day. So just do 30 minutes at that threshold of you're just about at your limit of being able to talk and it's not that comfortable to talk, but you can. On, say, Saturday or Sunday, when you do the longer cardio thing, do half of it as zone 2 and do half of it as intense intervals. 3 minutes on, 3 minutes all out, 3 minutes rest, 3 minutes all out, 3 minutes rest. So then you're getting that VO2 max benefit of training. You're getting the cardio based training on the other 4 sessions, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, plus the half session on that weekend day. Look, that's a totally, it's Tuesday, Thursday plus half day. It's a totally reasonable training program. You're gonna make great gains doing that. Now, at some point, you're going to plateau and you're going to have to make a decision, which is, am I going to increase intensity or am I going to increase frequency and duration? Because the reality of it is, I just think when I say I think, it implies it's my opinion. I think the data are quite clear that there's no upper limit to how much benefits you can get for more exercise, or at least from more fitness.
And what about someone like me who, when I go to the gym tends to be a little busy. I just like crank through. So I invariably, with doing resistance training, I don't do a lot of rest. I find myself in zone 2 for most of my workout. Is there benefit to that, or am I actually?
Depends what you're optimizing for. I don't think that weight training is a great way to get your zone 2 in. I think zone 2 is best achieved through steady state cardio, which could be, running, swimming, riding a bike, climbing a Stairmaster, doing all those sorts of things. And again, if you're doing your weights on really, really short intervals, such that the cardio aspect of it is what becomes taxing, that's great, but you just have to accept and acknowledge that you are going to make trade-offs, right? You are not going to get as strong as you otherwise would, and you won't necessarily put on as much muscle mass because you're not providing enough stress to the muscle as you would if you gave more rest.
Got it. So you definitely, when you talk about the data with exercise, you pointed out the data are unambiguous. The data is the data. And in my view, there's just still so much unknown in our world. I'm curious, I don't really quote Donald Rumsfeld much, but there was a great Rumsfeld quote. There are the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. What are some of the known unknowns you'd like answers to?
The tools that we can use to measure the effectiveness or efficacy of various interventions are crude. Like, we don't have very good biomarkers for the benefits of these things. So we have very good biomarkers for measuring the effectiveness of lipid lowering therapy, because we can measure ApoB, and ApoB responds directly to lipid lowering therapy. And so we can know in very short periods of time, right, in a matter of weeks, if this thing is working. And then even within a matter of years, we can get a look at the changes in, for example, a coronary artery, looking at a CT angiogram. When it comes to some of the other changes we're making vis-a-vis exercise, those have even more profound changes on the body, but we can measure some of them, right? Like, we can certainly measure fitness and strength in those things, and those become very good. But we're missing a step, right? We're not seeing what the gene transcription looks like. We're not seeing what the methylation pattern or epigenetic changes look like. And we don't know, frankly, what to look for anyway, right? So we certainly have the technology to measure those things now, but we don't know what we're looking at. And so if you think about sort of what's the sci-fi version of this, well, it would be really great if we knew, for example, if there are drugs or supplements that could be developed that could mimic some of the benefits. That's considered one of the holy grail things in geroscience is, could anyone ever come up with nutrition mimicking, so fasting mimicking supplements, or exercise mimicking supplements or drugs? And that's just a black box. Like, we literally don't have a clue what that would look like. So that's because those are unknowns at the moment. We don't really understand fully how those things exert their benefits.
You mentioned strength. Why grip strength? You've talked about grip strength as a proxy for longevity. What is it about grip strength?
Well, I think it's you want to be careful you don't read too much into this, right? It's sort of like why VO2 max, right? So VO2 max because is one, it's we measure it. It's something that's relatively easy to measure. It's very objective. Um, but also it speaks to a type of training. To have a high VO2 max is not just something you wake up with. You have to train to get it. So having a high VO2 max is a proxy for being very fit and training a lot. And similarly, grip strength is relatively easy to measure. It's something that can be, done very objectively from lab to lab, person to person. And it also tells you something about a person, right? People that have a very strong grip are generally very strong people. They're usually people who carry very heavy things. They're not people walking around with those little cheesy 1970s grip squeezer things that you see on infomercials, right? That's not how people strengthen their grip. So I think that grip strength has some obvious benefits, which is our hands are two of the four most important things we use to interact with the outside world. So if your grip is weak, everything becomes compromised in your connection to the outside world, right? If your grip is weak, it tells me that something in that kinetic chain from your lats to your scapula to your elbow to your wrist to your hand is weak. Um, and that's problematic. And if your grip is strong, I know that you are physically robust because you have to be doing something to enable a strong grip.
And essentially, the way to improve that is carry heavy things, walk around with dumbbells. That's how we get there.
Yeah, farmers carries, pull-ups, dead hangs. Again, there's lots of ways. I mean, carrying is hands down the most beneficial way to strengthen your grip because you can carry less than your body weight. So when a person is starting out, they don't have to carry enormous amounts of weight. And obviously, as you get stronger and stronger, I mean, a person can, easily deadlift twice their body weight. So you'll get to the point where you can hold much more than your body weight. But even just to walk, I mean, like when my kids come in the gym with me, I'll put little kettlebells in their hands that each kettlebell is like a quarter of their body weight. So they're carrying half their body weight. And I'll just have them walk around the gym holding those kettlebells.